All right. Well, it's my great pleasure today to introduce Mr. Clif High of halfpasthuman.com. He's an independent researcher. He puts out reports called The Shape of Things to Come, and they have a lot of important information that you're not going to hear anywhere else. That's what we specialize here and at The Real News. We talk about things that you wouldn't otherwise hear. And Clif High has a lot to say. He has his own research methods that I'm very interested in. And if you want to add anything to that, Cliff, that would be great.
Basically, that's exactly correct. We're into radical linguistics, and we do forecasts based on behavior trends that are revealed by shifts, rather subtle shifts, in lexical or lexicon use in the general population.
Great. Okay. So there are a couple of assumptions that sort of underlie most of your work, anyway, that you assume about the nature of human consciousness and subconscious interactions and
Oh yeah, there's
awareness.
probably scores of assumptions. Yeah,
Okay.
not just a couple. I mean,
All
pounds
right.
of the things.
Well, like a couple of basic ones that we do have an awareness that is subconscious that is beyond what we have in our conscious minds. At least that's one of the main ones that I. Um,
Sure, all humans are psychic at some degree. That is, in many cases, is extra conscious. I mean, in the sense that they're not necessarily even aware of it. And it's basically that all humans are psychic in the same way that all humans are some degree short or some degree tall. We find that psychicness exists as a component of what it is to be human.
Great, yeah, and so that collectively, this consciousness that we have can come out in our everyday interactions between one another online or in person, and you pick up this information from you call them fora, all over the internet, and it's populating your data set, and that's how you're gathering your predictions.
Correct. What we're doing, though, is first, fora is the plural of forum in
Right.
Latin. And so a lot of our words come from Latin, although actually 60% of English, you can trace the words back to Sanskrit, curiously. In any event, though,
Wow.
our basic premise is that subtle shifts in the lexical choice that you use on a weekly basis are betraying or leaking out some of your psychic impressions. And so we operate on the idea that every human has between 11 and 20,000 words that they use on a weekly basis, although they may have internalized, in the case of English, 100,000 or more words that they understand and know what the meanings are. But they use weekly about 11,000 words. And I noticed over time that there were instances when people would step out of their usual lexical choices for rather ordinary conversations, about baking pies or bread or gardening or something, and they would use sort of strange words. And so I started gathering those and collecting them and noticed patterns, and from that I extrapolate a forecast based on the shifting use of language. And basically, my theory is that, okay, everybody's psychic. They don't even know they're psychic, but that psychicness sort of wants to express itself. And so it kind of joggles your word center of your brain, and you use a choice of a particular word as opposed to your ordinary word, simply because that's your psychicness trying to get your attention to say, hey, pay attention here. And it causes these subtle shifts in language. And actually, what we're doing is an outgrowth of our work that was called the Alta reports. And that was around the idea of asymmetric language trend analysis. And from that, we make forecasts, not predictions and not prophecy. The difference is that a prediction would be that the Earth will continue to rotate tomorrow and the sun will apparently rise in the east. And that's
Okay.
pretty good. Or that we could say that this star will appear at this area at this time relative to our rotation. Those are predictions. Prophecy is saying that, well, there's a whole lot of people doing this, and I'm going to prophesy that this soccer riot or soccer melee is going to turn into a riot. And prophecy is interesting because since humans are involved, it may or may not come out. Whereas with predictions, it's more or less baked into the stars, so to speak, in the sense that it's rather firm in nature. And we're somewhere in between with our forecasts.
Great. All right. I wanted to mention this same sort of theme comes out in the work of Bob Prechter and Elliott Wave International, who says that we all have this subconscious awareness and we're constantly communicating that between ourselves, just in everyday conversations, and that a macroscopic sort of sentiment is evident, then basically he follows the
Correct.
stock markets.
What we would call an emotional tension trend. Correct.
Right. Yeah. And so he looks at the stock market and he says that the Dow Jones is a really good indication of the overall sentiment or emotional awareness of the people. And I was wondering if you'd been familiar with that or if you'd followed any of that before.
Sure, I know all about the long wave stuff. The mathematics is highly restricted. Mine is much more open. Their universe of potential indicators, again, is very much restricted. That is to say, all those people that care about the Dow.
Right.
And then also, he has an assumption that the Dow is somehow a free-floating, if you will, subjected to the vagaries and variables of life. And I
Right.
dispute that. I think it's a manipulated figure. It can be demonstrated over charts that it's altered and used by the powers that be for their particular emotional purposes. So I don't buy that the Dow is an indicator of anything other than what our supposed masters would have us believe.
Sure.
That is to say,
Yeah.
the propaganda press, etc.
I think there's definitely a good case to be made for market manipulations all across the board. I've looked at your last sort of turning of the emotional sentiment. Um,
Yes.
that was the end of October down to I guess, the 4th of November. And that followed a pretty good top in the Dow Jones at the time. And it carried down right into November 4th. And I was wondering
Good.
if you'd noticed this in the past, that when you see this release of tension, that you do get these sorts of moves in the markets.
Yes, we have noticed that there are people that buy our reports just for that purpose. They attempt to play the markets the way one might play poker in a casino or something, and it's just every bit as valid, actually.
Right.
So yes, we have noticed those, but what we're really dealing with are emotional trends for the larger populace. Now, so the Dow indicators and so on would be a subset that should, to some degree of lag or lead, follow or lead the general trend, and we think they follow.
Great. Yeah. I try to put all this stuff together and look at where we're going, Cliff, and I just see bad stuff ahead, and I'd like to get into some of your information. If you want to talk about maybe the July 7th date